Whether you're looking for world-class shopping or thrift stores, beer gardens or museums, Sunday jazz brunch or naked karaoke, sex parties or Protestant churches, Berlin, Germany is a place for you. With the unofficial motto, poor but sexy, Berlin hints at its diversity as well as its sense of humor. Welcome to the Down the Road Travel Channel. My name is Will Van Winkle, and herzlich willkommen in Berlin. There is plenty to see and do for everybody. We took a little time out of our trip to do some sightseeing. Now, we only had 9 days in Germany. That was really not a lot. During that time, we went to Heide Park, we went to Tropical Island, and we visited Sanssouci Park. All of that's outside of Berlin. I think Heide Park is 4.5 hours by GPS. Tropical Island's about a half an hour outside of Berlin, and so is Potsdam. That kind of cut into our trip just a little bit. But there is so much to see and so much to do. As I said, we only spent 9 days in Berlin. My connection with Berlin goes way, way back. It's much deeper than typical tourism. I lived there for about 9 years off and on. I've always considered it my second home. Souvenir stands are plentiful in Berlin. In fact, you know if you're in an area frequented by tourists just by the number of souvenir stands. Now, this is where you need to try to be careful. There are pickpockets everywhere. Berlin is subject to bouts of crime just like any other large city. Police are cracking down, but there are constantly new cons and scams, and they pop up as soon as the old ones are foiled. So always be on the lookout. Now, typically, if someone's asking you for money, they're trying to see where you're keeping your money. They'll come over, they'll ask you for money for some kind of cause or something like that. Typically, there's going to be a spotter nearby, keeping an eye on you, and then you become a target for later. We were approached at Brandenburg Gate by somebody doing just this. They were posing as somebody that was having a petition to sign. Here's what was giving them away. They didn't have clipboards. They had cardboard, and they had these petitions taped to that. They asked for money. When you said no, they start following you. The biggest giveaway, anybody that's involved in marketing or fundraising or anything like that typically has a lanyard with an ID tag that says what they're collecting money for, who they're working for, and the company they're representing. If they don't have that, they're running a scam 90% of the time. I'm not saying don't sign the petition, but don't get your money out because somebody down the road is watching you. We walked over towards the souvenir stand at Brandenburg Gate after this happened to us, and we actually saw police hauling away about 3 people doing exactly what I was saying they were doing. Another common scam is somebody walking around asking you if you speak English. If you say yes, they'll give you a little piece of paper. With that piece of paper, there's something on it. I said yes one time, keeping my hand in my pocket so that I would protect the money that I had. To try to read what was on the card, I have no idea what it said. It was very poorly translated. You could tell they used an online translator to do that. When you're reading that, somebody's watching, they come up, they take your money, you're picked clean while you're reading whatever it is. Keep in mind though, for the most part, Berlin is a very safe city compared to some of the places in the US. Food choices are boundless. Check out our video on what to eat in Berlin for a very small sample of what there is. And let me know in the comments if I missed your favorite restaurant, so that I can try it out next time that I'm there, because as I said, I have a deep connection with Berlin and I will be back quite often. I will point out most of the places we went in that video were on the more casual dining side, so we didn't really do much of the 5-star choices or anything like that. You know, Berlin on a budget. That's kind of how I've always approached it, because when I lived there, I didn't have a high salary, and any other time that I was visiting there or I was living there short term, I had no salary. So I always kind of approach Berlin as a budget kind of city. And, you know, in general, food costs are a little bit lower than the US. And in my personal opinion, the taste of the food is much better quality. So we're going to start our tour over in the east, because that's the side that the Moxie Hotel where we stayed at is on. We stayed at the Moxie Airport. I have a full-length video review on that. Watch that video to give yourself a better idea of what to expect there. But from the Moxie, we would drive to the S-Bahn Adlershof. I used to live in Adlershof right across from the S-Bahn. So I knew there was going to be places where I could park the car. Parking is difficult in Berlin, just like it is in New York, just like it is in Chicago. But we would ride in on the S9. The S9 goes all the way from Spandau, which is the westernmost point of Berlin on that line, to Berlin-Brandenburg Airport, or BER. We got off the S9 over at Alexanderplatz, started making our way over to the Museum Island, Museum Insel. We could have taken several buses or even the subway, but there's a lot to see along the way. We first stopped at a souvenir shop to pick up a couple things for some friends back home, and then made our way over to Marienkirche, St. Mary's Church. This church allows visitors inside, only asks for donations if you desire. So while we were inside, they were actually tuning the pipe organ, which, being a musician, I kind of thought was cool. It's located on Karl-Liebknecht-Straße, formerly Kaiser Wilhelm-Straße, in central Berlin near Alexanderplatz. The exact age of the original church site and structure is not known, but references to the site date back as far as 1243, with restorations taking place from the 19th century through the post-war period. The Marienkirche and the Nikolaikirche are the oldest standing churches in Berlin, and the oldest parts of the Marienkirche are made of granite, with the newer portions being made of brick. A statue of Martin Luther can be seen outside the church, which is open from 10 to 4 January through March, and 10 to 6 the rest of the year. Moving further towards the Museum Island, we ran across the recently reconstructed Berliner Palace. The original was built in 1443 and used as a main residence for the House of Hohenzollern until 1918. The palace was badly damaged by bombing during World War II and removed by the East German government in 1950. In the 70s, Palace the Republic was built, kind of a copper utilitarian building. The building was vacated in 1990 after reunification. Before the palace was demolished between 2006 and 2008, debate began on whether the original structure should be rebuilt or the palace should be reconstructed and refurbished. Some even said suggestions were made to combine the two. That would have been a monstrosity. Seeing the Berlin Palace, it's clear that the correct decision was made. It adds a lot to the area that's full of historic buildings, and it just really kind of completes that atmosphere there. The inner courtyard houses souvenir stands, coffee shops, and a cafe. While the exterior adds to the feeling of the old buildings surrounding it, only one section of the original building still exists. It was a porthole from a balcony where Karl Liebknecht had declared the German Socialist Republic. In 1964, it was moved across the street and added to the State Council building, where it now forms the main entrance. So Germany is real big on recycling materials, refurbishing old buildings and things like that. And then they took this historic area where the East German government basically was announced, and they preserved it using another building. As we near Museum Island, we come across Berliner Dom. Now, Berliner Dom was once the castle church serving the Berliner Palace. Several structures have served to house the church since the 15th century. The original building was erected in 1451, re-inaugurated in 1993 after post-war repairs. The dome height stands about 377 feet, and the building has undergone many changes since the original building was built. The Berliner Dom houses a fully restored pipe organ with 32 pipes, and the Berliner Dom does charge an admission fee starting at, I believe, €10. We then took a trip to the back of Museum Island to tour the Bode Museum, and I do have a full video up on that. We only did the ground floor because we had a couple of teenagers with us that were quickly getting bored with this. As I stated earlier, Berlin is home to many events, from marathons to triathlons, Fashion Week, art exhibits. While we were there, the Special Olympics were taking place as well, and it was in front of the Neptune fountain. So the first day, much of that side of Alexanderplatz was closed off. We did eventually make it over to the Neptune fountain that sits pretty much between the Marienkirche and the Rotes Rathaus, Berlin City Hall, made of all red brick. So its actually literal translation is the Red City Hall. Now here it already sounds like we did a lot, and Dana was actually worried that we wouldn't get all of this in, but she wasn't aware, and I'm sure many of you are not if you've never been. All of this is within a couple of blocks of each other. So the Museum Island, the Rotes Rathaus, Marienkirche, Französische Dom, Nikolai Viertel, they're all just within walking distance of each other. So touring the museum may make it a multi-day trip to the area, but if you're just looking at the outsides, the architecture, you're still seeing a lot of history, and it's all literally right there. Now be sure you keep a close eye on the facade of some of these buildings, especially on the Museum Island, especially if you're a World War II buff. You'll see a lot of pockmarks in those columns. Those are from shrapnel from World War II. Those are actually bullet marks or bomb marks. And some of it has been patched over. I believe they were talking about doing everything. I'm not real sure what happened with that because they kind of just stopped. So I think what they did was they repaired anything that was causing structural issues and left the rest for history. Now, once we were done at Museum Island, we headed over towards the Nikolai Viertel, the Nikolai Quarter, and looked at some of the historic old buildings there. First, we made a pit stop at the square of Humboldt University, which was on the way. And down there on the ground, if you look down, there is a glass window that you would walk over. In that area, you see a bunch of empty bookshelves. This is where these book burnings took place in the 1930s, the Nazi book burnings. And this is a sculpture that basically makes a statement on what happens when governments tell people what they can and can't read. The bookshelves will be empty. So you see all the empty bookshelves down there? That's so it's an art installation, and it's to signify what happens when the books get burned.
The bookshelves are empty.
Yeah. There's basically the lack of knowledge. So that's a very strong political statement, and it is a very powerful image. So from there, we kept on over to the Nikolai Viertel. We had planned on eating at a cafe bakery there. The reviews on it online are horrible. Apparently, you're paying for the ambiance and not the food or the service. While the area is what most people think of when they think Europe, it has cafes, small streets, shops with open doors, etc. The food is obviously geared towards tourists and people who just want to soak in the atmosphere. Now, if you're interested in this sort of thing, on the Nikolai Viertel, right before you walk into the area, there is a hemp museum and shop before you walk into the alley of the Nikolai Viertel. In fact, while we were there, there was an entire weed conference taking place. It's not quite legal there yet, but it's tolerated. They did just introduce a bill to make it legal, and I'm not sure what's going on with that. So if you're into that, Berlin may be the place to go instead of Amsterdam or Colorado now. Now, as I said, Berlin likes to reuse their buildings, their materials, things like that. The parliament was badly damaged in World War II. If you want to watch them debate on whether or not to legalize this, they have now covered over the roof with a glass dome. Tourists can go up into the glass dome and watch Parliament at work. Sounds boring to me, but hey, some people are into that, and I'm not judging. Berlin has something for everybody, as I said earlier. Continuing our tour, we're now nearing Potsdamer Platz, where I used to work at the Mandala Hotel. There's a couple of small sections of the wall still remaining there. From my understanding, there are markers that go the entire length of where the wall used to be, and Potsdamer Platz is the easiest place to find them. You'll either find a row of two cobblestones next to each other. Every once in a while there'll be a brass block in there explaining what it is, an indentation on the ground, or just those brass marks. Now, some buildings have been built right on the edge of that, but it picks up after those buildings again. We ate at the Burgermeister across from the Mandala Hotel, and then headed out over towards the Holocaust Memorial, also known as the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe. Sadly, it was closed for repairs. There is an attached underground information center, place of information, holds the names of approximately 3 million Jewish Holocaust victims. The 2,000 blocks are designed to induce a sense of fear, foreboding, and to disorientate visitors. There's really no significance to the number or the shape or the colors of the blocks. Now, some people have said it's symbolic because it represents coffins, gravestones, a cemetery. That wasn't the designer's intention, but art can be subjective. It is very interesting to visit. One thing that you do need to keep in mind is that this is not a playground. This is a memorial to murdered people. So keep your kids off the blocks, or keep yourself off the block for that matter. There are guards walking around the area to help guard against vandalism. These blocks are coated with a paint-proof material, so it's easy to clean off any kind of spray paint or anything like that. But when people are walking around on them, they do consider that disrespectful to the dead. So make sure you stay off those blocks. Around the corner from this is Topography of Terror. We did not go see Topography of Terror. It is very sobering. And with the limited time that we had in there, and having some people that are very sensitive to this kind of thing in our group, we didn't feel there would be enough time for them to recover from the experience. So we didn't visit it. I visited Topography of Terror before. It's very interesting, but it is very somber. There's an unexcavated ground floor area marked by gravel. You can go into the building. You can see pictures of concentration camps, of POWs there, of the Jewish people that were occupying the camps, and things of this nature. It's mainly news reports, news reels, and photos. There's no actual artifacts in the building itself last time I visited. But when you're walking down the grounds, you can see some of that stuff there. Now, this was in the former Gestapo City Jail. So there's a lot of history to this building as well. If your trip is short, you may want to skip this because it could be too much and too overwhelming. Now, across the street from the Holocaust Memorial, there is one more gray block with little tiny windows in it. If you go over to that gray block and look in one of those tiny windows, there's a video playing. This is a memorial to the murdered gays of World War II. So the Nazis didn't discriminate. They were equal opportunity haters, and there are memorials to quite a few of the groups that were targeted. The headquarters of Trabi Safari, pretty much right across the street from Topography of Terror. A Trabi is an East German car. You can drive around some of the historic sites of Berlin in an East German car. They are standard transmission. I believe they're column shift. They give you a little bit of a crash course, but if you're not good at a standard transmission, you have somebody in your car, in your party, that's a little bit better at it, or they team you up with another group. You may not want to be the one that drives. I've never done it. It looks like it would be a lot of fun. I've never seen anybody in one of those cars that looks miserable. They don't have air conditioning, so watch out in the summer as well. If you can get the car to move, it takes you through quite a few different areas. They have different tours to offer. They have the compact tour, 75 minutes, runs through the former east part of the city along Karl Marx Allee and East Side Gallery, over to the Oberbaumbrücke, and through a quarter in Kreuzberg. And that one is €59 per person over 18. Anybody under 18 is free. They have an XXL tour. It is about 2¼ hours long. €89 per person. 18 and under are free with that. So from here, you can easily make it to Brandenburg Gate. It's only about 3 blocks from Potsdamer Platz. I believe the angel and the chariot on top of Brandenburg Gate is original, and everything else had to be reconstructed because it was heavily damaged in the war. Tiergarten is about 3 stops on bus 1 or 200, which will take you to Große Stern, Big Star. It's a traffic circle with 5 outlets. In the middle of Große Stern is the Siegelsäule. It's a column with a gold statue on top. This is where Barack Obama gave a campaign speech while visiting Berlin. Rumor was that he wanted to give his speech over at the Brandenburg Gate, much like Kennedy's Ich bin ein Berliner speech and Reagan's Tear This Wall Down speech. He was denied by the government, according to the rumor. Interesting fact, side note, Kennedy's Ich bin ein Berliner speech is wrong. His speechwriters did not write that. In fact, Kennedy spent time coming up with that phrase on his own, meaning to say, today I am a Berliner, showing empathy and solidarity with the West Berlin people. By using the article ein, ich bin ein Berliner, he basically said, I am a jelly donut. To say I'm a Berliner, you just say ich bin Berliner. You don't need the article in that case. So when you add that article in, you become a jelly donut. Everybody loved him for the speech. You can still find t-shirts that say that. It wasn't a big social faux pas by any means, but it is an interesting thing to note that it was wrong. Now let's head west. We made our way to Zoologische Garten and decided to check out the Gedenkniskirche, the memorial church. built by Kaiser Wilhelm I between 1891 and 1895. The roof was damaged in the war in 1943, and the church was almost completely destroyed in 1945. The octagon-shaped new church next to it was built between 1957 and 1963 with its blue-lit glass exterior walls. The old church had to undergo millions of dollars of restoration work, but the roof was left in an incomplete state to serve as a reminder of what war can do as a war memorial. An exhibit with the history of the church and the surrounding area sits inside, and the church is still living history. Back in 2016, there were terrorist attacks on Berlin. A truck drove into a Christmas market, killing 12 people, injuring 56 additional. Now there are barricades all around the church, and there's a brass line that goes on the ground that shows you kind of the path of that truck. Across the street is the zoo, the Western Zoo. When Berlin was divided, if the West had something, the East needed something better or equivalent. I don't know if this was to make people feel equal, feel like their life was better, or to just kind of stick it to the man. We did not visit the Eastern Zoo. It is way too large for the shorter time that we had. So the Western Zoo is the zoo known for the baby polar bear Knut, which was born at the zoo in 2006 and died in 2011. It's the most visited zoo in Europe, and it's well known for its animal conservation and breeding programs, and there's more on that on a full-length video that we have up on our channel as well. You'll find decorated plastic bears throughout the city. These are the Berliner bears. That's the symbol of Berlin, even though bears have been extinct in the area for quite some time. Making our way back towards the east now, we visited the Samurai Museum. This is kind of a tribute to Japanese culture. It's complete with armor or costuming. There's a virtual Japanese drum show done by hologram, and history on this particular aspect of Japanese culture can be seen throughout the building. We then went back to Alexa, the huge mall over at Alexanderplatz. I believe it's 4 floors and a basement, often referred to as Miss Piggy by locals because it has a horrible pink color. We took a walk around Alexanderplatz to check out a couple of the fountains. We saw the world clock, which nobody I know seems to be able to read, and explained that Park Inn has bungee jumping and forward rappelling from the roof. If you watch Amazing Race, you may have seen this a couple seasons ago. For some reason, nobody wanted to do that. The city is very, very bike friendly. You can rent bikes on the street with a text message or a credit card. You can go into a shop if you're using cash and rent the bike there. Bike paths are well marked and they're taken very seriously. If you are on a bike path and you hear a horn or a bell, get off the bike path because you will be at fault for causing that accident. Speaking of bikes, I'm doing a cancer fundraiser in September for the 8th year in a row called the Great Cycle Challenge. If you are interested in helping out children's cancer research, there is a link on your screen right now where you can donate for my ride. There are thousands of people doing this ride, so you can donate to anybody or just go straight to that and donate there as long as it gets some money because we need to end cancer. That's my public service announcement for this video. Now, on one of our last nights, we went to Heiligensee area to visit the Hafenbartikel to go see the Hardcore Troubadours, which were a band I used to perform in. In fact, the song playing in the background right now is something that I wrote and recorded with the Hardcore Troubadours. Now, we have really just barely scratched the surface. In fact, we had to take a few things off of our list. I wanted to get some photos of Spreewald over in Treptow. This is an amusement park that was in Berlin, has a long, interesting history. No one knows for sure what's fact and what's fiction surrounding this. It's become this huge urban legend almost, complete with deals with the government, international travel, drug smuggling, jail time, and I think even death at some point if you're listening to some stories. So I wanted to get some comparison photos because I believe it's reverted back to government control. They were planning on remodeling it and having it open by now. COVID hit, delayed everything, but I wanted to see where the progress was from the old pictures that I took to where it is now. I didn't get to do that either. But if you can swing more than a couple weeks there, you'll not be disappointed by spending a few more days in town. In fact, you can actually take a couple of days off and relax a little bit. I hope this entire series on Berlin have given you an idea of what to expect, maybe some ideas of things that you really want to see and do, and help you organize and plan your trip. If you like the original music in the background, please find it on your favorite streaming app, or listen to it right here on YouTube. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you down the road.
Let's hit the road.